Now, the vast majority, approximately 95% of the people of all countries, go around and around without aim or purpose. They drift with the circumstances of life, good or bad.
A drifter is one who permits himself to be influenced and controlled by circumstances outside of his own mind.
Whereas the successful individuals create their own circumstances and ride them to victory.
When you're on purpose, you're living on purpose, you will never quit if you have a real purpose.
A burning desire to be and to do is the starting point from which the dreamer must take off. But what I have done has been recorded, it's been tested, it's being taken to a free world, and it's going to benefit millions of people who are not yet born.
And it's going to benefit millions of people who are not yet born. We're some of those people that we're spreading this to the world. As your awareness grows, the doubt is gone so that you can manifest whatever it is your heart desires. Isn't that beautiful?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly study of Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. This specific study is centered for veterans, military members, and their families, and it is hosted by a retired Marine that's always going to be a Marine, Frank Menard. And I am really proud. Both of us are certified coaches through the Napoleon Hill Institute. And what we're trying to do is just bring awareness to military members and the veteran community on how to, if we need to, of course, how to change our mindset, how to think differently so we can make different decisions and also be able to look at life from a different perspective. But nonetheless, everyone, welcome. Thank you for being here. For anyone that's going to watch the recording, Frank, the room is yours, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much, Erica. It's a pleasure to see everybody tonight. And you know, Erica, you hit the point. If there's a mindset change, then we're certainly here for that. But I think most importantly, we're also here to support each other as veterans. Not necessarily from a mindset perspective, but just from a camaraderie expectation. We all spent time in the military, regardless of branch of service. We walk out into the uniform, we put on that civilian uniform, whatever it looks like, and we leave something that we all enjoyed while we were in service, which was the brotherhood and sisterhood of our service. And so I know that, you know, I've now been retired since 1996, but I still love being around a bunch of veterans. I still love being around, especially Marines. And, you know, there's something to be said for that commonality that we all have for what we did in our service for our country, regardless of what that was, because we all serve different roles. So it gives me great pleasure to have an opportunity every week on Thursday evening at 7 o'clock to meet with veterans and speak about what I have a true belief in, which are foundational principles to help us become successful and live the best lives that we can live. And that is through the words of Napoleon Hill, specifically from his book, Think and Grow Rich. So, Joel, welcome back. Brandon, appreciate you being here. And Erica, we missed you last week. I just want you to know that. So I'm going to share the slides and we'll get started from where we left off last week. And here we go. It bears repeating that the universe does not discriminate between positive or negative impulses of thought. If your emotions are magnetizing destructive thoughts, it will aid in your unconscious efforts to attract misfortune. Most bad luck is the result of people having faith that bad things will happen to them. That's why it's crucial to feed your subconscious positive thoughts, backed by the firm belief that you will receive what you are asking for. Your subconscious will begin to direct your movements toward that end, which will make it easier to achieve your desires, as the universe will also be harmonizing with your thoughts and bringing opportunities your way. I always like to pause there because I think oftentimes we don't realize that the subconscious mind doesn't matter whether you feed it negative thoughts or positive thoughts. It's going to attract what you present to it. So oftentimes when we think about our self-talk, what are we saying to ourselves? And I've been a proponent of saying, many times we would never speak to our friends, our colleagues, our families the way we speak to ourselves. We tend to be very judgmental on ourselves. You're not smart enough. You're not worthy. I can't do this. The truth is, we need to rephrase. I had a meeting with a client yesterday. Actually, it was another book study I did last night. And I remember we were talking about procrastination. And one of the participants spoke up and said, "Oh, yeah, I procrastinate all the time." And I stopped her right there. I said, "You need to rephrase that. You need to rephrase that to say, I never procrastinate because I always do what's most important on my priority list." Because that statement of I procrastinate all the time is literally an affirmation. And you're affirming that that's who you are. So I think it's really important at this stage in tonight's presentation. I just want to say, when we catch ourselves saying those things, we literally have to reframe it right there and change what we're saying. Has anyone else in the room had that experience where you're catching yourself speaking negatively to yourself?
I catch myself faster now. I think that voice, because it's a program, it's there.
Right.
And at times in my life, that voice was very, very loud, and I did not know how to manage it. And because I didn't know how to manage it, it just kidnapped me, kidnapped my emotions, kidnapped my results, my actions, everything. And as I keep learning and just learning and just changing a little bit of my behavior and how I think, I catch that voice faster. And because I catch it faster, I can control it. So now the voice is there, but it's just a whisper.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe, you look like you had something to say.
I agree. I mean that those thoughts will never go away, but the fact that I'm able to realize that, and I'm able to respond versus react, and since I'm able to know that that's there. Before I didn't know it was there, and you go in a down spiral, and then your thoughts, fuel your emotions, and then it just keeps on going. But because of that, I'm able to just turn that negative affirmation into a positive affirmation, and the outcome is different now.
Yeah, it's interesting. In one of the sessions I was listening to last week, um, it was mentioned that Bob Proctor, who actually read Think and Grow Rich every day of his life for over 65 years, and he actually was caught on camera, on film, making a statement because as he was presenting to an audience, his negative thought process was coming into play and he caught it. And I'm not going to repeat what he said on camera because it's probably not appropriate. But the end of the day is here's a guy who dedicated his life to changing the way he spoke to himself and changing how he handled things by the complete study and just involving himself with everything about Napoleon Hill and the mindset. And he too was still hearing that whisper. And Erica, as you said, now it's a whisper, but that doesn't stop it from coming up. So when it comes up, we need to catch it. And the more practiced we become at catching it, hauling it back, putting it back in that closet so it doesn't have an impact on our lives is really, really important. So for me, being aware is one of the most important skills that we can learn. Be aware of what's going on in our own minds, because it is truly the only thing that we have complete control over. And
Yeah.
the strength is that we have control over it.
And that's the key. The key is knowing that we have a choice. And what you just read, Frank, of the mind doesn't know if it's positive, if it's negative. The mind doesn't know if the world is good, bad, or ugly, because it is what it is. And it's up to us to decide what our attitude's going to be. It's going to, the choice that all of us have, that no one in this world can take away, of how we are going to not react, because if we react, we are reacting at a very low level of awareness. But how are we going to respond? And when we respond to a situation, it means that there has been, and there is, a gap. And I don't know if that space is this big or this big, but there's a gap where we control our emotions, and then we decide how we're going to proceed forward. But Frank, we have Christopher in the room, and I just wanted to say hi to Chris, if Chris is an appropriate way of calling you. Hi.
Chris,
Oh, you're
Chris,
muted,
Chris,
friend.
you muted, my friend. I think I just unmuted you. Chris, are you there now?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. I just was going to say thank you. You're too gracious. Please continue.
Well, we want to welcome you to the room. So we really appreciate you being here.
So
Thank you.
Joel, Frank are Marines. I am from the Air Force. Brandon is a military supporter. What about you, Chris?
Retired 24 years, Lieutenant Colonel from the U.S. Army.
Army.
We finally got an Army guy in here.
We finally got a soldier. Oh my gosh. We have had all the branches. We finally get a soldier. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I was referred by my brilliant friend Samantha Redondo. So.
Oh,
Well,
that's
welcome to
fantastic.
the
Well,
welcome to the room,
Thanks.
sir. We appreciate
Thank
you.
Samantha's incredible.
All right.
Thanks.
So we're going to slide back to the slides, no pun intended. All right. So that's why it's crucial to feed your subconscious mind positive thoughts backed by the firm belief that you will receive what you are asking for. Your subconscious will begin to direct your movement toward that end, which will make it easier to achieve your desires, as the universe will also be harmonizing with your thoughts, bringing opportunities your way. However, our environments will inevitably contain negative influences. And so, along with working to create a favorable field of magnetic attraction through the positive emotions of love, faith, and sex, we must actively reject negative energy. So we have to take an active part in rejecting all that negative input that we get each and every day. It's really important that we're aware of that. All influences or vibrations should be filtered as they enter our consciousness, so that our subconscious mind does not internalize destructive thoughts. These are faith, love, sex. The first two are physical emotions experienced purely in the mind, whereas the latter, sex, is entirely biological. When we focus on an idea, plan, or purpose in a state of mind comprised of faith, love, and sexual desire, we harness the cosmic force that Hill refers to as infinite intelligence, a concept that derives from Ralph Waldo Emerson's well-known essay, Self-Reliance. In it, Emerson writes, "In that deep force, the last fact behind which analysis cannot go, all things find their common origin. We first share the life by which things exist, and afterwards see them as appearances in nature, and forget that we have shared their cause." What did we gather from that short expression about love, faith, and sex, about protecting ourselves against that negative input.
I think just like everything else, there's two sides. There's a side of loving, if I'm going to use a partner, loving the right person for you, or loving the wrong person for you. Yeah, having faith in a dark environment where, like you said before in the other slides, I have faith that I'm going to fail. I just know that I'm going to fail. And that faith drives my imagination to think the worst case scenario. And, oh, why am I surprised that the worst case scenario just happened to me? Right. And again, there's some songs out there that says, finding love or finding sex in the wrong places, using that beautiful energy of those three things, faith, love, and sex, in the wrong place, is going to keep you spinning, or is going to keep you in a dark place. But if you combine those three different energies and you use them intentionally to move forward to whatever that forward dream is, then you're cooking with gas now, my friends.
Yeah, and when you think about it, when we start to set goals and we identify our burning desire and we start to express what it is that we want to accomplish, what we want to achieve, oftentimes we get feedback from the people around us. Oftentimes that feedback is not necessarily positive. We can't stop the feedback from coming, but we can choose, as Erica mentioned earlier, not to react to a situation, but to respond. Thank you so much for that feedback. I really appreciate it. By keeping solid in our own mind and our own desires, that was a person's opinion. And as Hill says often in his book, opinions are worth exactly what you pay for them. Typically, we get opinions, we receive opinions from people who have no evidence that their opinion is actually fact. And yet we follow those opinions as if they were fact.
Well, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and in that right, we just ask our friends, we ask a family member, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? Or I just did this. What do you think? And they give us their opinion from their perspective, from their own paradigms. They're not experts, but we take their opinion as if they are. And I don't know if it's Bob Proctor, but there are experts out there that say, don't do that. Please don't do that. If you're going to ask for feedback, you take that product to the expert that can truly give you an expert opinion.
And it's not just that. It's not
Turn
just
off the
family and
other
people around us. We've got.
It was Brandon.
Yeah, you got him? Okay. It's not just the feedback from the friends and the family and the people around us, but it's the media.
Sure.
Everything that we're being bombarded with each and every day. I mean, we can't wake up in the morning, we can't go to bed in the evening without hearing all of the negative things about what's happening in our world. And I was taught years ago, my perspective is there are two worlds. There's the world, and then there's my world. And I only control one of those. And I think it's important for us to realize that we truly do have control over our own world. I mean, we don't have to make believe everything is wonderful and there are no problems in the world, but what parts of all that negative news that we get actually truly has an impact on us as individuals? And rather than look at the negative aspects of it, can we look at the positive aspects? How can we change our world, which in some way, shape, or form will have the impact on somebody else's world? By being positive, by being focused, by being caring, by trying to serve and help other people in any way that we can. And I think one of the big benefits of studying material such as we're studying this evening is it talks about the positive aspects of the things that we can do versus falling into the trap of the things that drag us down.
Of course, and I'm interested in hearing from Brandon, Christopher, and Joel, but this is the deal. This is the deal, Frank.
I'm in.
It is really nice to hear those words, but when you are not doing well, when you are in a dark place, when things are not working your way, when you are in transition, and it can be from a divorce, it can be from military to civilian, it can be from a career to, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're going through a blurry place, and then here is all of us saying, oh, just think positive and just walk forward, and it's like, stop, right? So we're going to keep saying, keep moving forward. We're going to keep saying it's worth fighting for, it's worth getting up for. So that's not going to change from us here. And I just don't want anyone that's either watching the recording or here in the room to think that we are Pollyannas just looking at the world as this perfect place. No, it takes work, it takes intentionality, it takes patience, it takes falling and saying ouch, and sometimes staying down for a little while before you get up. But I'm interested in hearing from others. Welcome to the room, Renee.
Hi, Erica. Thank you.
Nice to see you. Well,
Welcome,
see you.
Renee.
Yep.
So does anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, I think sometimes we don't tell each other sometimes we don't tell ourselves, sorry, for how you've reacted and how you've responded. Uh, you're not that person anymore. You become a different person. So you have to acknowledge your own self of how, the new person that you've become and what struggles you've had. You tell other people and you encourage other people, but you never encourage yourself. So what I want to say is just that, stop for a moment and acknowledge that, the world is not perfect and that you're doing the best you can with who you are.
Very well said, Joel. Doing the best you can with what you have and who you are at that moment in time. Because we all respond differently depending on where we are in a current situation. And Erica's right. Sometimes we have to take a pause, and sometimes we get knocked down, and sometimes we're not sure where to turn. And I think we have to recognize that, because we are human beings. We all need other human beings to help us through our journey, whatever you want to call it. Failure is not a destination, it's an event. Something that happens to us is just an event. How do you choose to respond to that? Christopher, you have something to add?
Yeah, thanks. Didn't mean to interrupt. Such a beautiful conversation. I just would chime in, when prompted, that since I left the military, I've had two jobs, both of which looked great on paper, and I would have thought going into it that I was going to really enjoy. And I'm kind of proud of the fact that I had the courage to leave them because I wasn't happy in either case. And that kind of goes along with the choice dogma that you guys are promoting, which I'm all about. That's all. I won't interrupt again. Thanks.
No, please do. It's not an interruption. This is a two-way street of conversation. We're Erica and I are here as coaches to facilitate a conversation to be helpful to all the veterans in the room. And that encourages your interaction. We really do appreciate it. Matter of fact, it makes our job a little bit easier because everybody in the room has had a different experience and has had to deal with something differently. We've all been released from service at different times. You know, I think I've been retired almost 27 years, 28 years now. Erica, maybe not quite so long. And you know, we all have experienced a different transition. And so your feedback, Christopher, is we welcome it wholeheartedly. You're not interrupting. Go ahead, Erica.
Yeah, thank you. And Christopher, yes, this is a conversation. This is it's guided by Frank as our host, but it's a conversation where we can share, because what we want is for us to be really present in the conversation so we can give to the people in the room. And at the same time, if we are present in the conversation, then receive from everybody else in the room. Thank you for sharing about the 2 jobs, and do I feel like I belong? Am I happy here? Am I really living my purpose? Am I all those questions that we ask? Statistics show that, and I don't know the reasoning, but the first year of us leaving the military, if we are not, again, in this type of rooms, and if we're not intentional, if we don't transition well, statistics show that we're going to have 5 to 6 different jobs. We go in, it's like, what is this? I don't fit. Who am I? I'm an outsider. That's a different culture. Next job, next job, next job. I was doing a 3-day kind of training one time, and a soldier, you know, in Alaska. He lived in here in the States, and he couldn't find who he was out of uniform. So he moves all the way to Alaska thinking that that's where he's going to find himself. And what he found is frustration on top of frustration. And he is telling all of us, saying, I have had 12 jobs in 11 months. So go ahead, Renee.
Hi, I was gonna say, but also on the flip side, when you transition from the military, you know what kind of environment you want to work in for the most part. And if your values do not align, we need to give each other grace and say, you know what, this doesn't work with my values. It's better for me to be somewhere else, because we've had such a hard job, you know, while we were in the military.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Again, everything that we say, at least for anything that comes out of my mouth, has 2 sides, right? So it's for the first time, us being able to decide where we're going to walk instead of waiting for someone to tell us what to do, or looking at a policy, or looking at a regulation. Absolutely, I get it. It's just having the conversation so we can get clarity here in order for us to make better decisions for our own walk. Thank you, Brennan.
Yeah, and I think my side of that, Renee, is, you know, we do have to give ourselves some grace. We're entering into unknown territory in many cases. I mean, I served 22 years before I walked back into the civilian community, and it was a much different civilian community that I walked out of. You know, when I was a young 18-year-old, 19-year-old, right? And so we have to adapt to change. And fortunately, as veterans, we typically are pretty good at adapting to change. Some of the challenges that we face is you can adapt to change, but you can't change your values and your principles, because we hold those very true to our heart. And I'm recalling back in my early days, right after I retired, I'm not ashamed to say I was in automotive sales, and I was on a sales floor, and I had a delivery due at noon. And you know, it's noon. My clients are in the showroom waiting for their vehicle, and it's not where it's supposed to be. So I go back to the recon department, and I'm trying to find out what's going on with my customer's vehicle. And they're all sitting there having lunch. The vehicle I was supposed to deliver was only half done. And I I can't even understand why we're having lunch when I've had a client waiting for their vehicle. And I did not necessarily react appropriately. And I remember the owner of the dealership, who was a Navy veteran, pulled me aside later on that afternoon. He says, you know, Frank, you just can't do that. Something about picking a guy up by his throat up against the wall because he didn't respond the way I wanted him to. Probably wasn't politically correct. But you know what? At the end of the day, that Navy veteran who owned the dealership gave me some grace because he understood where I was coming from. But the community that I was working in, what I was doing, they just didn't uphold the same bar that we uphold, didn't have the same value, the same respect for people's time. They were more interested in having their lunch. So I had to adapt. I didn't have to accept, but I had to adapt and find better ways to respond and or react to those types of situations. Anyone else have anything like that that kind of occurred when you made that transition?
I sort of have.
Um,
I
I
saw,
actually have
I saw Chris jump in, then he jumped out again.
no, yeah, sorry about that. Switchology issues. Okay, so just last month, I was T-boned when I was driving, and in kind of a bad neighborhood. And the driver got out, and he was an unlicensed kid, and he had another minor with him in the car, and they were incredibly belligerent, threatening me. Their family showed up. They were not much better.
You're breaking up a little bit on us, Chris.
I had to myself. I was so oh yeah, I was but I got incredibly angry during that exchange. And I was hurt somebody. And it was all one-sided. Please believe I did not react in any manner that was threatening or reciprocating. But it sucked, and that was last month.
Yeah.
And I'm an old man now. So
that's the hardest part for us to accept, Chris. we still carry the weight of what we were taught, but we can't necessarily carry the consequences. But that happens all the time. And I think, fortunately.
Yeah, the kid didn't even have a license. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the experiences that we have sometimes require us to take some of the lessons that we learned in service, patience. We call it patience now. I think back then we called it discipline, the discipline not to respond or react in a bad way and make the situation worse. So just being able to recognize that, and I can share that after many years of being out of service, I still have some of the same internal responses, but I've learned that you don't necessarily handle them the way that I did to that poor young man in the recon department when he was looking at me with his bug eyes out saying, what is this guy doing to me? So, Renee, anything to add? Brad? If not, then we'll go on to the next slides.
No, thank you.
Here's the fountain of action and thought. Here are the lungs of that inspiration which giveth man wisdom and which cannot be denied without impiety and atheism. We lie in the lap of immense intelligence, which makes us receivers of its truth and organs of its activity. This immense intelligence could also be called nature, the universe, God, or transcendental consciousness. It is the cosmic energy that finds expression in humans and connects us with the greatest source of goodness and wisdom in the universe. Applying the positive emotions to a thought causes it to become more firmly entrenched in our mind, while also energizing it to seek an outlet in physical form. In the realization of that idea, plan, or purpose, this process can be represented by the following diagram. Thought. plus positive emotion, faith, love, sex, plus action plan equals the physical manifestation of the thought. It is important to note that action is required, both in terms of the active cultivation of productive thoughts and the positive emotions, as well as in terms of creating and following through on a direct plan of action. Infinite intelligence alone will not manifest your wishes. I'm curious as to what kind of reaction you have to what I just read. In that statement, those last few slides, we talked about infinite intelligence, we talked about God, we talked about the universe, we talked about nature. What are those things, or what impact did those statements have on you, and how would you react? So my first reaction is nature requires everything to be in balance. The universe requires everything to be in balance. Darkness comes at roughly the same time every day. So does the dawn, the dusk. The stars align. The world goes around in circles. Night always follows day. Winter always follows fall. I'm in Florida. It's summer all the time. You know, the world, the universe appreciates and rewards balance. When we start thinking about the things that we want to do, we have to remember that everything begins with a thought. And at Napoleon Hill, we actually teach you have thoughts and ideas. You identify a burning desire, something that you truly want, true to the heart. You create a plan of action, and then you take action. And in his writings, Napoleon talks often that 98% of the universe drifts through life from consequence to consequence. They avoid making any definite decisions. And if they do make decisions, sometimes they'll put together plans, but oftentimes people become paralyzed with perfection, so they don't take action on their plans. They want everything to be perfect before they take action because they're afraid of risk. You know, the most common fear for most people is the fear of poverty. They're afraid that if they take a step, if they take an action and they fail, they'll lose everything they have. And so therefore they don't take any action at all. I mean, I'm curious, what are your comments about that?
Frank, I want to make a comment about giving up everything you have. Because there's different levels, and I don't remember who said it, but someone had a dream and said, I'll give anything, everything I have for that dream. Well, what do you have? $200. That's all I have. Are you willing to give up $200 for your dream? Yes. There goes the $200. The dream comes true, successful, tons of money. And now he has another dream. And the same question from the same person is, are you willing to give everything you have for your dream? Now that you have it, now that you have a lot of money, you have a lot of things. And I'm just going to leave it like that. I don't want to tell you what he answered. But that's the question. Sometimes, everyone, it is easier to give everything you have when what you have is very little. And as you start gaining and your dream's still waiting for you, then it becomes much harder for you then to give up everything for that dream. I just wanted to put that on the table for discussion if anybody has a comment, but it's sometimes much easier to go, yeah, this is all I have, my $1.50, right? Than $1.5 million. There you go. Anyway, thoughts?
I want to
Anyone?
add something.
Go ahead, Joel.
I there's things that I was holding on to in the past that I wasn't able to let go. And recently I've let go of some other things. You know, I let go of my past life because I'm not that person anymore.
That's right.
I was still holding on to what I thought that's who I was, you know, but it's really all in your mind that you literally have to let everything go. You literally have to let everything go in order to move forward because if not, you're going to keep on repeating your same mistakes. And
Joel,
uh,
a couple of weeks, I think it was a couple, I wasn't here last week, but a couple of weeks ago, I remember you talking about that decision of letting go of some relationships, right? Because that was what you needed to do to move forward.
yeah, it's including that. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes it might be monetary or sometimes it might be, you know, your own family members that are just trying to, they're not there to, it's their perspective, it's their perception of how they see things, and they're not ready to move on. So you have to move on without them, even if that's what it takes, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's a huge step, Joel, and everyone in the room to realize that we as individuals do change, and it's okay to put the old you back in a closet somewhere and become someone new and someone different. That's called growth. That's called life. That's called experience. Um, I would actually worry. I would be scared if we all stayed the same for our entirety of life. You know, hopefully maturity helps us a little bit. Hopefully the experiences, positive and negative, that we go through in our lives, um, the things that we've seen, the things that have happened, uh, they're in our minds. And as we spoke about earlier, those things never really leave,
Mhm.
but we get to choose what we do when they raise their heads. I remember a day where I oftentimes got very angry and I would let that emotion show. And I actually laugh now because I never get angry anymore because it's just not worth the energy and it doesn't get us the result. So rather than to be angry, I try to look for ways that I can change the situation in a calm, relaxed manner. And I'm thinking about what Chris said about the way that he had got T-boned and the lack of respect and the level of anxiety and anger that was going on in that situation. I can only imagine, and the amount of control that it takes to not react and make the situation worse. But being able to admit, Joel, as you just did, I had to let that person go and become a different person. I mean, that's huge. And that's a huge lesson for any veteran going through transition, because that transition is challenging. It's difficult. It's hard. I don't care how easy it looks. Internally for us, it's hard. And I love the fact that I'm a veterans advocate and I stay involved with a lot of the veterans organizations to help veterans in that transitional process. It is, in fact, the reason that Erica and I both had decided to be involved and head up the military, the Veterans Division of Napoleon Hill Institute, because we're here to support and to help and to do this. We're just talking. It's a conversation. And hopefully we walk away each Thursday evening, we walk away with just a little piece of something that we can put to use the next day or the next time something happens that we're not quite sure how to respond to. Anybody have any comments?
So, Frank,
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
Renee. I think that as you transition, you have to grieve,
Mm.
I
Yes,
love it.
yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
because there's a loss, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
huge.
And I, you know, we focus so much on, you know, the next position, the next whatever, that we forget to say goodbye to the old life.
How many of us kept our uniforms in our closets for such a long time?
I still have mine.
In all honesty, Renee, I still have a few of mine too, and I wear them on those occasions, us Marines in our dress blues and in our evening dress and for the Marine Corps birthday balls. But I'm also a member of the Marine Corps League. I got involved with an organization that allows me to wear a uniform and serve my community and still be part of the service that I was active in for so many years. I think that's okay. That's healthy. And it actually creates an environment for us to support and help other veterans. My Marine Corps League detachment here in Southwest Florida is just under 100 strong. And we get together once a month. We get together. We do a lot of things in the community. We do fly honor guard ceremonies. We do funeral details. We throw benefits or charity drives to help people in the community. It's good to have that camaraderie and that sense of belonging. But you're right. Sometimes I still grieve. I'm still a Marine. I'm waiting for the phone call to ask me to come back. Not sure it's going to happen. A little late now. But at the end of the day, I think it's okay to put the uniforms away. I think it's okay to accept that we're now doing something different. But personally, and I'd be interested in your input, guys. Personally, I'm always going to be a Marine. Erica said it at the beginning of our call tonight. I'm a Marine. First and foremost, that's who I am. That's me, not necessarily everyone else. So, comments?
I just want to say that I almost gave up my positions this past weekend, and I literally resigned from the two organizations I was involved just because of what I was going through. But just because just because I'm involved with them so heavily, like they were actually able to reach out to me, and that camaraderie was there to support me in the time that I needed. We're all going through tough times, and the fact that we have friends that are there for you, well, they will always reach out. You're never alone, no matter what you're going through. Life is always going to be challenging, but if you don't surround yourself by other encouraging individuals, it's going to be even harder. So I encourage just to be involved, no matter if you're just a member or participating or not. As long as you have brothers and sisters that are always there for you, be active and just join an organization. We're all here to help each other out grow, and I encourage others to speak up here in the group, because it's just you learn from each other. We're all going through different experiences, but those different experiences lead us to learning from each other.
Yeah, well said, Joel. Renee, I don't think we ever asked, what branch of service?
I was in the Marine Corps like you.
Hoorah.
Hoorah, Semper Fi.
Erica's hair just went crazy. The Marines are in the house. Oh my goodness.
Marines are in the house, but I spent a chunk of my military time with the Marine Corps. So I'm gonna tell you a story. I ended up with the Marine Corps a lot because I flew airback. So anytime there was a conflict, anytime I was deployed, anytime I did an operational mission as a trauma medic, we would be the ones taking care of the Marines that were injured and taking them someplace else. In Somalia, I was airback, but there was times where I was grounded at different phases of the deployment. And in those times, I was assigned to the Marine Corps to be with the Marine Corps with the counter intel folks in Somalia. And so my heart is with the Marine Corps. Even when I was in high school, I know I ended up doing 32 and a half years in the Air Force, But when I was in high school, everything that I did in high school was to be a Marine. Everything. I went to the recruiter, I went rappelling, I did all the exercises, everything that the Marine Corps asked me, I did. And do I regret being an airman? Absolutely not. But I do have a respect to my brothers and sisters in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. It's, you know what? We are all brothers and sisters, regardless of the shade of our uniform. You know, and I see that every single day. And I think, Joel, you made a really valid point. None of us are here alone. Unfortunately, some of us have that sense that we have to do it on our own. We can't ask for help because asking for help is a sign of weakness. And I'm not just talking about, the suicide thing. I mean, that's a horrible thing that's going on. But I'm talking about just daily activities, just doing stuff. I actually was having breakfast today, and a woman sat down across from me, and I don't know who she is. And she said, "Sir, what do you do for work?" And I told her, I said, I'm a full-time coach with Napoleon Hill Institute. I'm involved in personal development, and she was obviously going through a rough time. And it appeared that she had just moved here from a different area, and she's looking for a job. And, sir, do you know of a job or something like? Well, I give that woman so much credit to just sit there and talk to a complete and total stranger and ask for help. And, unfortunately, I couldn't help her, but I could put a hand on her shoulder. And I said, "I wish you the best of luck, Kathy." I did learn her name. And it's so hard for anybody to ask for help when they're experiencing something new in a new environment, or just trying to get used to a different way of life. So ask for help. It's okay. Any final comments before I go to the slides?
Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's actually a sign of bravery.
Thank you,
That's right.
Joel. I love it. You're absolutely right, my man. Absolutely right. Takes a strong person to ask for help. It will, however, join forces with your thoughts, magnetized by positive emotions, and send more of what you're putting out into the universe back to you, while also strengthening your resolve to carry out your purpose. It bears repeating that the universe doesn't discriminate between positive or negative impulses of thought. If your emotions are magnetizing destructive thoughts, it will aid in your unconscious efforts to attract misfortune. Most bad luck is the result of people having faith that bad things will happen to them. That's why it's crucial to feed your subconscious positive thoughts backed by the firm belief that you will receive what you are asking for. Your subconscious will begin to direct your movements toward that end, which will make it easier to achieve your desires, as the universe will also be harmonizing with your thoughts and bringing opportunities your way. However, our environments will inevitably contain negative influences. And so, along with working to create a favorable field of magnetic attraction through the positive emotions of love, faith, and sex, we must actively reject negative energy. All influence or vibrations should be filtered as they enter our consciousness so that our subconscious mind does not internalize destructive thoughts.
Frank,
Yes.
I just have a quick question. I know that, we're a few minutes from the top of the hour, but I don't think we mentioned if people have the book, what chapter is being covered this week?
So This is the book that you're reading on the slides. So the book, if you look behind Erica to off her shoulder, you'll see a book called Think and Grow Rich. That is the original version that was written in 1930 or published in 1937. This book is a condensation of the original version of Think and Grow Rich. In other words, what the author did was they took out the meat and potatoes, took out all the stories, and it's focusing on simply the principles and how to apply them. So we use this book as a talking guide, as a facilitation for us to have conversation. It looks like the next slide, we're going into talking about faith.
So we just, in this book, everyone, we just finished chapter 1. Chapter 1.
Chapter 1.
And it follows this book. So chapter 1 here, chapter 1 here.
Right, exactly. The chapters follow exactly in the same place. But thank you, Erica, for doing that, because I think oftentimes I get started and I forget that new people are coming in and going out. The important thing is I encourage everyone to purchase both of the books. My Think and Grow Rich is sitting right over there next to my reading chair. I read it every morning. I also read the condensation here every morning because it's actually Think and Grow Rich in 10 minutes. It's a short shot in the arm. Sometimes that's all I have is 10 minutes to read and remember. And I actually conduct a Wednesday night book study, which I call a perpetual book study for my local community, my real estate agents, my loan originators who I work with. This stuff needs to be read repeatedly. I mentioned earlier Bob Proctor, who was a very successful personal development coach in his own right. He was handed the book that Erica just showed you, Think and Grow Rich. I think he was 21 years old. And he read that book every single day for 65 years. And he unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. But he credited that book, this book, Think and Grow Rich, with any success that he achieved in his life. I call it a philosophy. I actually did a video not too long ago, probably a couple of months ago, and it asked the question, what's your philosophy? And a philosophy it's the methodology. It's what are the rules that you live by? Now, it doesn't have to be this one. I have a friend of mine who actually just became a certified coach for the Zig Ziglar Corporation. I call her a friend. She was actually a coaching client and a friend. And she became a certified coach with Zig Ziglar. And I got a chuckle. She's also in my book study on Wednesday nights. She said, I went to Zig Ziglar because it seemed like it was newer. And I chuckled because Zig got all of his stuff from Napoleon. So at the end of the day, what we're presenting here, choose to accept it or not, choose to read it or not, choose to study it or not, what we're presenting is nothing more than a philosophy. It's a philosophy to live by. And there are many good philosophies to live by. But we're presenting it from the perspective, Erica and I are both certified coaches with Napoleon Hill Institute. We're both believers in the material, believers in the system. We both were exposed to it many, many years ago before Napoleon Hill Institute was even created. And at the end of the day, it's a choice. And you get to choose how you want to live and what's the philosophy you're going to live by. So just curious, any questions? We've got about 2 minutes left before we hit the top of the hour.
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to add, before I met you guys, I was looking for a group that was studying this book, the Napoleon Hill book, Rich, Think Rich. And I actually was at work and I listened to it twice in English and then once in Spanish, just to get different aspect, just different views of it. And I solely want to follow that, and I found the group, so that's why I like coming here every day.
Yeah, it's awesome, and you've been here every week on time, ready to roll. One of the things I would recommend, guys, because there's so many different ways that you can learn this. For about 60 days, I actually listened on Audible. There's a recording on Audible by Earl Nightingale. Marines in the house. Earl Nightingale was a Marine. He was actually a survivor of the bombing of the USS Arizona in Pearl Harbor. And he has a condensed audio version of Think and Grow Rich. It lasts for it's about 45 minutes. And for 60 days, I listened to that every day during my 3-mile run. And it's just a really good way to get into the material from a different perspective. So you get the original book, you've got the condensed book, and you got a recording from Earl Nightingale, who has the most fabulous voice that you could ever listen to when it comes to audio recordings. So I share that with you. I encourage you, download the Audible Think and Grow Rich by Earl Nightingale. Or I think it's Think and Grow Rich read by Earl Nightingale, something along those lines. Erica, anything to add? We're at 8 o'clock.
Yes, no, thank you again, Frank, for hosting, Renee, Joel, Brandon, and Christopher. We appreciate you, and we welcome you every single week. Next week, we will start with chapter 2, which is the faith chapter. Again, not looking at faith from a religious perspective, but faith from a much, much bigger perspective, especially from very successful individuals, Napoleon Hill, and other experts. So I can't wait to see you next week. Thank you again for being here. And I am going to stop the recording and say goodnight.